I asked this before I went to prayer so that we can be prayerfully thinking about this as well. And that is, how many of you right now, you just, don't raise your hands, but just ask yourself the question, how many of you are making decisions right now? The decisions that you are asking God for wisdom on. Have you ever been in that position? A lot of us here this morning are in that position where there's certain facets, there's certain things in our lives where we need some wisdom on. And in going deeper, I want us to look at the scripture and say, how can we become more wise in what we do and how we live? The text that we have been, Kendall, if you go to the next slide, a text that we have been basing this series on and the foundation on is Hebrews chapter 6. Therefore, let us leave the elementary teachings about Christ and go on to maturity. Going on to maturity means we need to call upon God instead of relying on ourselves, but rely upon the Lord in making decisions. I'm telling you, making decisions is just difficult. It's hard. How do you gauge wisdom? How do you possibly look at wisdom and go, that's wise and that's unwise? I mean, how do you do that? Unless it's like moral stuff, like, okay, right and wrong, you can say, well, okay, right and wrong, that's kind of easy. The Bible talks about that. But what about all the rest of the stuff that we enter into in our lives that are not necessarily black and white of morals, what we should or shouldn't do? And there's just decisions that we have to make. And God says, hey, listen, you need to turn to me. But how do you know what's wise and what's unwise? Have you ever been in that position before? You just don't know what to do. You don't know how to make this choice. You got like 4 options. You're not sure if what's right or wrong about those, but you need to make the right one. It's subjective sometimes, right? Making choices can be subjective. I remember, was it a couple Sundays ago? Maybe I just didn't know, or but Cammie and Brendan have been married for how many years? 28? Is that what you said? Yeah. Love it. 28 years they have been married. And I don't know why it didn't register, but last Sunday, Cammie said that she was married when you were 17 years old. I want to tell you, as a father, when I heard that, I'm going, oh. I would think to myself, that would be a very unwise decision, right? But yet, look at the results. Look at the fruit. Look at what God has done with your guys' lives. And so it's real easy. I mean, 90% of the time, probably, that would not be the best choice. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's hard to tell. How do you decide what's wise and what's unwise? How do you do it? What do you do? I don't know about you. There's times where you just get in a pickle. You just don't know what to say. You don't know what to do. What decision do you make? You ever been in a situation where it doesn't matter what decision you make, you lose anyway? Yeah, it's like we've all been. Yeah. Really, wisdom is an art, not a science. It's an art. And we're going to look at the text here because we're going to have some fun with this. We're going to enjoy it. King Solomon, you probably heard the story. We're going to be reading it just to set up the context. Here's King Solomon. He's inherited from his father, King David, the kingdom of Israel. And he goes to Gibeon, where the Ark of the Covenant is, and where the tabernacle is, I should say, and he's offering sacrifices, and he's seeking God in worship. It was a wonderful time of worship. He gathered as many people as he possibly could, leaders of leaders of leaders, and got them all at Gibeon, and he is worshiping. They are worshiping the Lord. And then God meets with Solomon in the evening. Most scholars believe that it was in a vision or a dream that he had that night. And God appears to him, and God asks him this. That night, God appeared to Solomon in 2 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 7. That night, God appeared to Solomon and said to him, ask for whatever you want me to give you. And look at his response. Now, Lord God, let your promise to my father David be confirmed, for you have made me king over a people who were as numerous as the dust of the earth. Give me wisdom and knowledge, that I may lead this people, for who is able to govern this great people of yours. Now, if I wanted to, I could unpack an entire series on just this. I'm just using this as an illustration. Do you notice how Solomon asked God, not for wealth, and God says that later on. He says, you could have asked for wealth, you could have asked for military victory, but instead you asked for wisdom and knowledge. You look at this and you say, well, because wisdom and knowledge will give you all of the rest, right? And God says, I'm going to give you all of that too. Because he asked for wisdom and knowledge. But what I want to do is I want to walk through what is the difference between wisdom and knowledge. What is the difference between these two? It was an interesting day yesterday for my family, and most importantly for my in-laws. And my son Justin's fiance, Dad died last week, cancer. And Justin has only known Randy when he has been sick. And that's been for a couple of years now. And at his funeral yesterday, there was something that was said that was just amazing. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, this is about my message. This is perfect. And when Randy was in high school, his youth pastor asked him a question about wisdom. He said, Randy, what is wisdom? Because Randy, his whole entire life has unfolded in such a beautiful way with his commitment to the Lord and his family. It's just a beautiful picture for me to see on the outside, looking in, and now on the inside as a part of their family. He answered his youth pastor with these words, and you have it given. Knowing how to use what you know. That's the definition of wisdom. It's knowing how to use what you know. You see, it's not enough just to say, hey, I want to be wise, or I think I'm wise. Notice that King Solomon asked for both. He asked for wisdom. Oftentimes we look at this text and we just kind of look at Solomon's asking God for wisdom, but he asked God for knowledge too. I want to just sidetrack for just a moment and kind of leave this, because in sitting in that service, I must have had 500 people there. Very large church there in Albany. And just having different people come up and share about this man's life. I sat there, and this is what came to me, and I hope this doesn't sound too bizarre. I thought about, because there are people there that didn't know Jesus, that aren't Christians, that don't follow God. And I sat there and I said this to myself. I said, doggone it, Christians know how to die. We just know how to die. Think about that. Those are wise words. And I'll tell you why. It's because if you know how to die, you knew how to live. Does that make sense? Not just the things that were said. It's because of what was there, what took place. The impact of one person in this world, one person, because he made good choices. He was in high school when he answered that question. I'm glad my youth pastor didn't ask me. What's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? Wisdom without knowledge is inexecutable. Let me say that again. Wisdom without knowledge is inexecutable. It can't be done. I mean, you can think a person is as wise as all get out, but if you got nothing, if you don't have the information, you can't use it. It's like a gun without a bullet, like a car without gas, like a computer without software. It's like Matisse without a palette. Think about it. Wisdom requires knowledge. But without wisdom, without the knowledge, you can't execute it. The next thing is what about knowledge? Knowledge without wisdom is executable, all right, but it can be disastrous. It can. It's like you can have a lot up here, but you don't have the wisdom to use it. That's not good. You're a GPS with no directions. You know it? You got a lot of maps in there. You got a lot of information, but you're not going anywhere fast. Knowledge and wisdom go together. Honestly, they're inseparable. They're two sides of a coin. You cannot have one without the other. And Solomon asked that of God. I want both of those. I need knowledge and I need wisdom. Because without both, we're not making good choices. We're not being wise. I love this James passage. It's like, I'll be honest with you, as a pastor, it's like it kills me sometimes to use a text that has been used so many times. But you know, it's the word. It's just good stuff. James chapter 1, verse 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously without finding fault, and it will be given to him. The first thing is, if you want to apply this really practically, ask for it, you need it. Ask for wisdom, you need it. Number 2, God will not find fault with you. Don't you love that? God won't, come on. That would be, Kyle, it'd be like, you were a tutor, right? It would be like somebody going to you as a tutor and saying, I need help. And you're going, and yeah. And you mock them and laugh at them. It's like, it would be silly, right? It's like, that's your job. This is God's job. He wants to give us wisdom. And he does it without finding fault with you and me. Because he knows without him, we're not going to make the right choices. And the last thing is, get ready to receive it. When you ask God, be ready to receive it. Because I want you to know something about wisdom. It really comes with experience, right? It's kind of like the same principle applies to this as you ask for patience. You know the story about patience, right? Don't ask God for patience, because if you do ask him, he's going to give you a bunch of things to work through to make you patient. And that makes me extremely impatient. It just does. Anyway, let's move along here. What I want to look at here is, well, what about, I know as Christians, we kind of have this in-house discussion dealing with wisdom. And what I want to do is I want to look outside of this house for just a moment. I want to look at psychology. I want to look at kind of the art of wisdom. And this is what has been said in philosophy and in psychology about wisdom. It is, in the context of this, knowledge may be necessary for wisdom, but it definitely isn't sufficient. An ability to see the big picture, a sense of proportion, considerable introspection also contributes to the development of wisdom. That's good stuff. I tell you why. Because it helps to expose and us to understand what the Bible already says. And that's the beauty of this. Notice the first part of it says you need to have the big picture. If you want to be wise, the big picture is knowledge. You gather as much information as you can, and you need to see the big picture. But also the big picture, if we understand it, dealing with our faith, is that we need to trust and have faith in God in the big picture. Because a lot of times, people will look at Christianity, and if they leave out God and you leave out a superpower, the amazing God in our lives, you will miss a great element in the formula of what wisdom is. And you will look at people like Abraham and you go, Abraham, what in the world? Where are you going, Abraham? I'm going east. I'm sorry, at that place, you'd be going west. Go west, young man. And so he's going west, and his friends are probably looking at him going, you're crazy. That's a very unwise decision. But God told him to, and so he did. What about Noah? God says, build an ark. A lot of people are going, that's nuts. So there's faith and there's trust that is incorporated. The next thing is, there's a sense of proportion and balance. I love when they said that in this article. Number 3, considerable introspection. Here, Kendall, I'm going to need you to move along through unless I did not put it in there. It's not in there? It's not moving. Technology. I should go back to flipping the paper over the chairs like I did last week, you know what? Because then I know it will work. Oh, boy, I got a quick, cute story. You know, I did that last week about flipping the paper with the answers on it, and that was my technology. I said to the kids at the very end, I said, okay, guys, this is my last class. I did it 5 times. I said, whoever wants to take those pieces of papers, they can come and get it. I am not kidding you. They bolted out of their chairs. It's like they dived on the chairs, trying to tear the paper out. They go, it's just words on paper. It's like crazy. It's amazing. Kids are so hungry. Let's get back to this outline. What I want to do is, the beautiful thing about the Bible here and when it comes to wisdom is this. It's testable. And God gives us a test that we can go by on how we can decide whether we are making a wise choice or not. Now, I don't know about you, but when the Bible gets that clear at this point, I get pretty excited about it. If you'd like to follow along, it's in your outline. James chapter 3, verses 17 says this, but wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. I got 7 things I want to walk us through. 7 things. This is just gold. Number 1, it's right living. Notice it says that the wisdom that comes from God is first of all pure. And do you remember last week when we looked at the original language and we looked at the word holy, or we looked at the word sanctified or consecrated or set apart? That's the same word given here. That's what makes studying the Bible so much fun. It's the same word. It's hagios. And it's just a different derivative of it. And so when God says, I want you to be a holy people, he says right here that I want your wisdom to be pure. It's the same thing. It's so cool. He goes, your wisdom ought to be pure. And that's what's important. It's like, you know what? What a great way to start off is the decision that you're about to make. Is it pure? Is it right? Is it the right choice? Is it about right living? It would just kill me if somebody's saying, I'm going to go out and do something that God's word says don't do. It's like, that's the first clue that you might not be making a good choice, right? If God's word doesn't support it, don't do it. That's a start. And oh, by the way, this is so cool. What James is doing here, he's making an argument out of not just one thing about wisdom. It is a compounding, it's an accumulative argument for wisdom. Not one of these 7 on its own works. Together, all of them make up for what wisdom is. So one, it is right living. Next one, again, we used this word last week. It's getting along with others. Now, if you look at the text, it says it's peace-loving. That is so cool because that's that same word, irene, that we talked about last week. Remember, Irene is the name. It's where we get the idea of it's the best thing for us and it's a blast. We're going to have fun doing this. This is basically saying getting along with other people. You're a peaceful, caring person that you want to get along with others. That's what wisdom does. It gets along with people. It cares about what other people care about. It's getting along with them. And that's something that is important. You see, you can talk about peace all you want to, but if we're not willing to live that peaceful life and getting along with other people, what good is it? You're trying hard, aren't you? That's good. Next one is, it's compliant. Isn't this interesting? It says peace-loving, and then it says considerate. You know, one of the things about wisdom, the opposite of this would be a person who's full of it. Full of themselves. It's the opposite of that. A wise, listen to this, it's not necessarily a wise person. I'm talking about wisdom that is used, wisdom that is expressed. Not just that it's, I'm not using it as a noun, I'm using it as a verb. In other words, it's what you do. So wisdom would be something that is, it's considerate of someone else. It's not full of themselves. Number 4, it does not dish out justice. It's full of mercy. I don't know, do you ever struggle with this? Do you ever struggle with the fact that you just like to dish out justice? You see justice and you want it dished out. It's like you see something that's wrong and you just want to make it right, especially if maybe you've been hurt or offended or whatever it might be. What's interesting about wisdom here shows mercy. It's easy to see justice, by the way, isn't it? It's easy to see it. You know it, you recognize it, but what's really hard about wisdom at this point, you don't dole out the justice. You dole out His grace and mercy. Listen to this. That's a sign of wisdom. Because it's easy to see something and go, boom, I know what's right, and this needs to be corrected. Boom, 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 boom. And God says here, you know what wisdom is? Wisdom is you need to be full of mercy. You need to be full of grace. Not justice. You want to hammer out and see. That's, in studying and preparing this, I think, wow, you'd think it'd almost be just the opposite. But it's not. Interesting. The next one, number 5. It has good effects. It's evident, and it has good results. It's full of mercy and good fruit. It has good effects. It's evident. It brings good results. That's why this is an accumulative argument for wisdom. Because oftentimes you can look at something and you can go, well, I think this is the way to go. But not all the time is doing something that you think is right or that I think is right or what's it look like over time? Is it yielding good fruit or bad fruit? One person said this little phrase that's fantastic. How's that working for you? How's that working for you? Is that getting the results you really want? Is that bearing good fruit or not? We really see that in bad habits that we do. They're very unwise, as bad habits produce bad fruit. One of the things I've noticed, and by the way, it also talks about it requires cultivation to bring good fruit. Now, hey, I love raspberries. I am a raspberry nut. I love raspberries. When I first got to church here a few years ago, there was a lady in our church, and she had raspberries in her backyard. And I said, oh, I love raspberries. She goes, I'll get you some. So she came to church the next Sunday with about 3 or 4 starters for my raspberry field. Forever. Some of you got it. And I took them and planted them in my backyard. I love raspberries. But this last winter has been terrible. I mean, I watered my raspberries last year because the raspberries that I wanted the next year are the ones that are growing right now. And they're the new starters, the new shoots that are shooting up. Don't mess with those. That's next year's fruit. Don't prune those. Don't cut those down. It's just a terrible winter. Terrible winter. It's like it just rained and rained and rained and rained and rained. And I don't know about your raspberries. How many of you grow raspberries? How many of you like raspberries? I had a terrible year. You had a good year? Did you have a good year? You didn't have a good year? Anybody have a good year in raspberries? You did? All right, I'll talk to you after church. In fact, I need to make a pastoral visit. Although I don't know how seasonal they are, but mine are completely gone. What poor ones I did have. But anyway, let's get back to this point. I will get back. It's like, you talk raspberries, I go nuts. It's like, it was a terrible year. I mean, the winter affected it didn't matter. I made a lot of bad choices, though. I was not a wise gardener. I procrastinated. I didn't trim or trim back the things that towards the end of last year to get it out of the way. I let them grow all the way through wintertime. And then finally, it wouldn't stop raining all the way till July. And so it's like, I didn't even want to look at the dumb things. But boy, I paid the price for it. Bad raspberries. I'm done with this message. I've had enough. I'm already in a bad mood. Let's go home. No, the point is, wisdom will produce fruit. You guys, I started off with how old were you when you got married? I know she was 17. 19. So you were young too. Wow. Scares me to death. But you look at the fruit. Did they make an unwise decision? No. The fruit has bore that out because they sought the Lord. They really have had and will have and whatever a great. All right, let's move on. It's like I'm still got raspberries on my mind. Let's go. Balance. Next thing is number 6, balanced without favoritism. Wisdom is balanced without favoritism. The scales of wisdom are balanced. It doesn't show favoritism. And the next thing and the last thing is this. It's not two-faced. It's not two-faced. It says in the text here that it's impartial and it's sincere. The word sincere here, it's interesting because James is using, of course, he's using this Greek language. And the Greek language, this word means two-faced. It means that the Greeks loved to act and to do plays. And they would put a mask on, and whatever mask that person had on, they would act out the role that mask had as a part of the play. And so this word, to be sincere, it's not being two-faced. It's being sincere, it's being honest. It's having and believing in the decisions and the choices you make are sincerely genuine in your heart, that you know that's the right choice. It's not just flippantly blown off by saying, oh, whatever, I'll just, you sincerely seek the Lord with it. You sincerely do that. You're not two-faced. It's not, okay, God, I'm going to make this choice over here, but I'm not going to make it over here with you. I'm going to make it over here with you, but not over here with you. It's not being two-faced. It's not being blown by the wind. It's being sincere. In closing, I want to be able to spend just a moment of time of prayer. How many of you need wisdom? You need God's wisdom in your life. Wisdom dealing with decisions that we make on a daily basis in your Christian walk, in your relationships, in your job. What we do on a daily basis in our life. I guarantee it. Solomon asked for wisdom and knowledge. First of all, this fall, we're starting our electives. We're going to have like 4 or 5 electives for our adult Sunday school classes. The kids are already in a regimental routine, but we're going to have some electives for adults and teachers. This is awesome, you guys. We've got like 10 or 11 adults have stepped forward to say, hey, I'd be willing to. It's exciting to see what God is doing. And the electives and the things that we're doing, increase in knowledge. If you really care about your faith, by the way, how can you possibly be wise if you do not know God very well? Huh? How can you be wise? That would be arrogant. Okay? Seek the Lord. Know more about Him. I know people that know and want to study and learn about everything but God, which I don't understand. Why would you want? I would think that as a Christian, as a believer, you'd want to know more about your Creator. The one, by the way, you're going to spend eternity with. Right? Get to know Him. Or you're not going to like heaven very much. I mean, come on. So it stands to reason, right? Grow in knowledge and in wisdom. So when we close in prayer, I want to know, with our heads bowed and our eyes closed, how many would like to just raise your hand and say, Pastor Dane, I need wisdom in my life to make some decisions I'm going to be making. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bless you. So many hands. Okay, let's go to the Lord. Lord, we come to you, Father, and we're